Maria was born on a quiet morning in the Arizona desert, in a small Apache reservation where life had always been simple, but not always easy. From the very first moment, it was clear that she was different. She had no legs, a rare condition that made movement impossible in the way others could. Her parents loved her dearly, but the village people whispered behind their backs. In their eyes, Maria was an unusual child, someone who could not follow the traditional paths of the tribe. While other children ran freely across the dusty land, climbing hills, chasing animals, and racing with their friends, Maria watched them from the side, longing to join but unable to. Her early childhood was filled with small but constant reminders that she did not fit in. Simple things like playing hide and seek or attending community dances were impossible for her. The other children didn't understand why she couldn't join, and some were cruel in their curiosity. They would point and ask questions that sounded innocent, but stung deeply. "Why can't you run like us?" Or, "Why are you different?" Maria's parents tried to protect her, but there were moments when even their love could not shield her from the world outside. As Maria grew older, the whispers became more pronounced. Elders, who usually guided the tribe with wisdom, avoided looking her in the eyes. They said quietly that she was a bad omen, that she carried misfortune simply by existing. They refused to include her in important tribal events, rituals, or lessons. While other children learned how to hunt, make traditional crafts, and understand the stories of their ancestors, Maria was often left behind. Sometimes, she would watch through the edges of the gathering, listening to the songs and stories she longed to understand, feeling the warmth of community that was always just out of reach. Despite this rejection, Maria had a bright and curious mind. She loved listening to stories, reading books that the small village library held, and watching the world around her. She became skilled in small tasks she could manage with her hands. She learned to weave baskets, make simple pottery, and even carve small pieces of wood into shapes she imagined. But every attempt to show her skill to the tribe ended in disappointment. Some villagers would nod politely, but most ignored her work entirely, as if it had no value. Maria tried to hide the sting of their indifference behind a soft smile, but inside, her heart ached. The desert could be harsh, but Maria found a strange comfort in it. She would spend hours outside, letting the wind brush her face, listening to the birds, and watching the sun rise and set. Nature didn't judge her. The rocks, the sand, and the distant mountains treated her the same as any other being. She began to explore small areas she could reach, dragging herself carefully with her arms or using small, improvised wheels she created from old toys and wooden scraps. Even in isolation, Maria discovered a sense of freedom she never felt inside the tribe. But the loneliness was heavy. She watched families celebrating, children learning to ride horses, and elders teaching lessons that she would never be allowed to join. Sometimes she would cry silently in the corners of her small room, feeling invisible and unwanted. She longed for someone to see her, truly see her, not for what she lacked, but for who she was inside. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in gold and orange, Maria decided to explore a little further than usual. She moved slowly, dragging herself toward the edge of the reservation where the hills met open land. Her arms were sore, but she didn't mind. She liked being in places where nobody watched her. In those quiet moments, she felt like herself, not a child judged or ignored. As she reached a small creek, she paused to rest. The water flowed gently, reflecting the colors of the sky. She dipped her hands in and felt the coolness spread through her fingers. It was peaceful here. For the first time in a long while, she smiled without thinking about the whispers or the judgments. She thought she was completely alone, but then a voice broke the silence. "You're struggling," the voice said, soft but clear. He was middle-aged, wearing simple clothes, and carried the calm presence of someone who had spent many years working under the sun. His eyes were kind and unjudging. Maria hesitated, unsure if she should speak. She had been ignored or treated strangely so many times, she didn't know what to expect from a stranger. The man stepped closer, carefully, without seeming threatening. "I can help," he said simply. "Do you want me to?" Maria studied him. There was no mockery, no pity in his eyes, only an honest offer. She nodded slowly. The man smiled gently and reached into his bag, pulling out some small tools and pieces of wood. He began to explain, in calm and simple words, that he could make something to help her move more easily. Maria had never experienced kindness like this. For the first time, she didn't feel judged or unwanted. Over the next few days, the man, who introduced himself as John, visited Maria regularly. He carefully measured her, crafted a simple wooden chair with wheels, and taught her how to use it. At first, it was awkward and exhausting, but Maria persisted. Each small movement became a victory. She could now roll across the land with a little more independence. She laughed for the first time in months as she sped along the dirt paths, feeling the wind against her face. John never treated her like a child, and he never acted as if she was broken. He spoke to her as an equal, asking about her dreams, her thoughts, and the things she wished to do. Maria found herself sharing things she had never told anyone. She told him about the loneliness she felt among her tribe, the way the elders ignored her, and the dreams she still held inside. John listened quietly, nodding, never interrupting, never judging. For the first time, Maria began to feel hope. She realized that her life didn't have to be defined by rejection or judgment. There was a world beyond the whispers of the tribe. A place where she could be valued for who she was, not what she lacked. She still thought of her parents and the people she had grown up with, but she also began to imagine a life where she could move freely, work, and be independent. John encouraged her to take small steps. He showed her how to tend a small garden from her chair, how to water plants, and even how to help with small animals. Maria discovered she had a talent for nurturing things, for seeing what was needed and taking care of it. With each passing day, her confidence grew. She realized that she was more capable than she had ever been allowed to believe. And though she still thought about her tribe, about the rejection and the loneliness, she no longer felt trapped by it. She had found someone who believed in her, who saw her as a person, and that changed everything. She began to dream of possibilities she had never allowed herself to imagine. A life with friends, a sense of purpose, and freedom to move through the world on her own terms. That evening, as the sun disappeared behind the hills, Maria sat by the creek, watching the water flow. John had left her some food and a small notebook to write in. She picked up her pen and began to draw plans for the garden she wanted to grow, ideas for the chair she wanted to improve, and even thoughts about learning skills she had never dared to try. For the first time, she felt a sense of excitement, a belief that life could be more than survival, it could be full of possibilities. And though the tribe had turned their back on her, Maria knew she was not alone. Somewhere beyond the rejection and the whispers, she had found a person who truly cared. Someone willing to see her strength instead of her limitations. And that small spark of hope would guide her toward a life she had never thought possible. With the wooden chair John had built, Maria began to see the world in a new way. Every day, she discovered small freedoms that she had never thought possible. The chair wasn't perfect, but it gave her mobility, and with it, a sense of independence she had never known. Rolling across the dirt paths near John's farm, she felt the wind against her face, the sun warming her skin, and the freedom to explore in a way that had once seemed impossible. John continued to guide her patiently, never rushing her and always encouraging her to try new things. He showed her how to plant seeds in small patches of soil, how to water them carefully, and how to watch them grow. Maria's hands, once idle in the quiet of her room, became busy with purpose. She learned to tend to small vegetables, caring for them as she would care for herself. Every time a sprout pushed through the soil, her heart swelled with pride. At first, it was slow work. Maria often struggled to reach the ground or move heavy containers, but John adapted the tasks for her abilities. He crafted low garden beds and made small ramps so she could move easily between them. Together, they planted tomatoes, corn, and beans, and Maria discovered she had a natural touch with plants. She could sense what they needed, when to water, and how to nurture them. For the first time in her life, she felt she was capable, that she could contribute, and that her presence mattered. John never pressured her to do more than she could, but he also never let her give up. He treated her with respect and dignity, never speaking down to her or showing pity. This respect changed Maria profoundly. She began to smile more, laugh more, and even speak about dreams she had buried long ago. She told John about the books she had read, the stories she wanted to write, and the ideas she had for her future. John listened carefully, encouraging her to pursue every small hope. As weeks passed, Maria's confidence grew. She experimented with improving her chair, adding small wheels and handles so she could move faster and more smoothly across the rough ground. John helped her test each change, cheering her progress. With every adjustment, Maria felt a small victory, and her independence grew stronger. She realized that though her tribe had rejected her, she could build a life full of purpose and pride. The farm work brought Maria a rhythm she had never experienced before. She learned to care for chickens, gather eggs, and feed the animals. She discovered that even tasks that seemed small were important and rewarding. For the first time, she felt useful, not as a burden, but as a partner in the life John had shared with her. Their days were filled with simple routines, planting seeds, harvesting vegetables, mending fences, and sharing meals. But in these small acts, Maria found joy and belonging. The more time Maria spent with John, the more she realized she had begun to heal from the pain of rejection. She still remembered the cold stares and whispered judgments of her tribe, but those memories no longer held the same power over her. She had found acceptance, kindness, and friendship in a place she had not expected, and that gave her strength. She began to look forward to each new day, imagining what she could accomplish and how she could continue to grow. John also taught Maria simple woodworking skills, allowing her to create small tools and objects that helped her in daily life. Together, they built small ramps, shelves, and containers that made her mobility easier and her work more efficient. Maria discovered a sense of pride in her creations. She realized that, though her body was different, her mind and spirit were powerful. She had skills, ideas, and the ability to make life better for herself and others. Slowly, the word of Maria's progress began to spread beyond the farm. Some villagers noticed her determination and skills, though not everyone changed their attitude. Still, Maria did not seek their approval. She had found a person who believed in her and a life that gave her purpose. That was enough. She began to see that her worth was not determined by others' opinions, but by her own actions and courage. In quiet moments, Maria reflected on how far she had come. She remembered the loneliness she had felt as a child, the harsh words of elders, and the isolation that had seemed endless. Now, she had a friend, a mentor, and a world of possibility before her. She realized that strength did not always come from running, walking, or climbing. It came from perseverance, creativity, and the courage to accept help when it was offered. As the seasons changed, Maria's small garden grew abundant. She harvested vegetables, shared meals with John, and even experimented with small crafts she could sell in nearby towns. Each success, no matter how small, gave her confidence and pride. She began to dream even bigger, imagining new ways to make life easier for herself and others in similar situations. John supported her in every idea, offering advice and encouragement without judgment. One day, Maria found herself thinking about her tribe. She knew some, might never accept her. But she also realized that she no longer needed their validation. She had built a life full of meaning, surrounded by someone who valued her abilities and spirit. This realization filled her with a quiet joy. She was no longer a child rejected for being different. She was a young woman capable of living fully, creatively, and independently. Her days continued in this rhythm of growth and exploration. She learned to navigate the land with confidence, tending to the farm, caring for animals, and creating tools to improve her mobility. She discovered new skills she never imagined she could learn, and with each success, her self-esteem blossomed. John became not just a helper but a friend and mentor, celebrating every step of progress and reminding her that her abilities mattered. Maria's story began to inspire others quietly. While she did not seek attention, people who saw her determination and skill could not help but admire her courage. She showed that physical differences do not limit potential, that kindness and opportunity can transform a life, and that rejection from one place does not mean the end of hope. As the sun set each evening, Maria would sit by the creek, reflecting on her journey. She remembered the pain, the loneliness, and the rejection. But those memories no longer defined her. Instead, she thought about the future, the garden she was growing, the skills she was learning, and the life she was building with John's help. She had found a place where she belonged, where her efforts mattered, and where she could dream without fear. And in that quiet desert land, Maria realized something important. Life's value is not measured by what others say or think, but by the courage to keep moving forward, the willingness to accept help, and the determination to create your own path. She had turned rejection into strength, loneliness into resilience, and despair into hope. The story of Maria and John became one of quiet triumph, a reminder that compassion, support, and determination can change lives. Through patience, creativity, and simple acts of kindness, Maria had discovered a life richer than she had ever imagined, proving that no obstacle, however large, can stop a determined heart.